Right, first up we go to the United States, where President Donald Trump's impeachment inquiry, a public hearing still underway. There's been a bombshell from Gordon Sondland, the US ambassador to the European Union, who admitted to putting pressure on Ukraine to investigate the Bidens at President Trump's express direction. Well, Sondland also implicated US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and former National Security Advisor John Bolton. Our correspondent Harry Horton joins us now from Washington, D.C. Harry, thank you very much. So, firstly, how damaging is what Sondland is saying? I understand in his opening speech he said there was quid pro quo, a favor for a favor.
Yeah, it was pretty explosive opening statement from Gordon Sondland. Gordon Sondland is a political appointee, President Trump's ambassador to the European Union. He's a long-time Republican. He donated $1 million to President Trump's inauguration fund. So this is somebody who we know has been pretty loyal to President Trump in the past. So it's significant because he is somebody whose credibility is harder for Republicans to attack. In his testimony, he blew several holes in the Republicans' defenses they've made so far of President Trump. Many Republicans have argued throughout this process that even if some ambassadors thought there was a quid pro quo, even if they were telling the Ukrainians that they wouldn't receive vital military aid or a White House meeting until they opened up this investigation into the Bidens, that those ambassadors were freelancing. They'd misinterpreted what the US policy was and what President Trump's directions were. Gordon Sondland's testimony in Washington today makes very clear that in his view, no, that wasn't the case. What he was doing, he fully understood to be at the direction of the President of the United States. He was working very closely with Rudy Giuliani, President Trump's personal lawyer, and Gordon Sondland making clear that he was no freelancer, he was no stooge in this whole process. He was doing what he was told by senior Trump administration officials and people very close to President Trump was what the president wanted to do. So a big hole blown in the defences that Republicans have managed to put up so far during this impeachment inquiry. Yeah, because the President Trump has always said his call, where several people listened into that phone call with the Ukrainian president, was perfect. But this is activities around Rudy Giuliani, the lawyer, pushing, he says. So this goes well beyond the call, doesn't it? It does, yes. It's in addition to that phone call, and you're right to say that that is very significant. The other thing that was significant about Gordon Sondland's testimony was the fact that he implicated several senior Trump administration officials during his opening statement. He named the Vice President Mike Pence, the US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He named senior White House officials, and he said, look, I was constantly keeping all these officials abreast of what I was doing. They knew that I was telling Ukraine that they needed to open up these investigations in order to get this vital military aid. Several times in his testimony, he said, everyone's in the loop. In other words, he's trying to make clear here that, look, you can't say that I was acting alone here. All of the senior officials in the Trump administration knew what I was doing, knew the policy that I was pursuing. This quid pro quo activity was the policy of the Trump administration, according to what Gordon Sondland has said in his testimony.
So at issue here is whether the president used his public office for private gain to go after his political enemies. Is Sondland himself at all saying that what he did was wrong, or is that not at issue?
Sondland says he now realises that what he was being asked to do was troubling. And he said he's come to this realisation after hearing the testimony of several other witnesses and reading about media reports, and also after seeing the transcript of that phone call between President Trump and President Zelensky. Gordon Sondland is saying that he viewed these activities as wrong, but only, if you like, in hindsight, in retrospect. And I think part of the problem for Gordon Sondland, and one of the holes that Republicans will try and pick in his arguments, is that this is the third version of events we've heard from Gordon Sondland. He's already testified privately once to this inquiry. He then issued a statement clarifying that testimony, and then this testimony that we've heard today in public differs again from those previous testimonies. So there is a credibility issue for him here, which is why does his story keep changing? Now, he says that's because he has lots of meetings with people all the time. It's hard to recount all of them, and he also accuses the US State Department of restricting access to his emails. But look, there are holes in his argument that Republicans, I think, will try and probe as they continue questioning him throughout today.
Yeah. And what is President Trump saying on his favorite platform, Twitter, today?
Yeah, we've not heard from President Trump on Twitter. There's been a few retweets of Republican lawmakers retweeting some of those defences. We did hear from President Trump earlier as he left the White House to travel to some meetings in the state of Texas. President Trump said that, repeated that again when he was talking to Gordon Sondland. President Trump said that he told Gordon Sondland there was no quid pro quo. He didn't want a quid pro quo in his words. Now, Gordon Sondland has said although President Trump might have said that to him on the phone, the actions of other Trump administration officials, the pressure that they were putting on him, made him feel that there was a quid pro quo. That was what he was being asked to do. But President Trump, he feels as though that he's got enough out of this testimony that he can still keep himself at arm's length from this investigation as it continues over the next few weeks.
All right, thank you very much for that update, and we'll follow those impeachment hearings. SABC correspondent Harry Horton in Washington, D.C.